Hi, my name is Anna, and I'll present our paper, Chatbots Language Design, the Influence of Language Variation on User Experience with Tourist Assistant Chatbots. For chatbots, language is the primary resource for achieving interactional goals, since the characteristics that define a chatbot is the ability to interact with users in natural language. Task-oriented chatbots usually have social roles traditionally associated with human, for example, a tutor, a healthcare provider, or a customer service representative, which increases the user's expectations on how the chatbot should behave. People expect chatbots to follow conversational protocols, including the language that coheres with the social role that the chatbots impersonate. Chatbot language design is often based on the concept of style. Usually, the designer defines a persona and builds the chatbot sentences based on how they believe that persona should sound like. However, a person's language is not the same in every context. We humans can recognize the language fit in a particular situation. For example, the language we use for speech differs from the language we use for texting a friend or writing an email, even if the topic is the same. More importantly, people with different styles would likely use similar language under similar circumstances. In sociolinguistics, this is a concept called a register. Register establishes that, given a situation, the core linguistic features have a functional purpose, and so they would be preferable no matter how the person's style is. In other words, the register encapsulates a possible style variation. The question that remains is, can we leverage this theory to inform the design of chatbot conversations? We designed this study in the context of tourism information search to evaluate whether register can help shape the user experience with chatbots. We wanted to present the user with a travel-related question and two possible answers from a chatbot. One that was register-specific and one that wasn't, and see if the users would prefer one or another. The problem was, to perform this study, we needed a corpus of paired responses with similar content but in different registers, which was not available. So we decided to build that corpora. We collected two corpora of conversations in the tourism domain, FLG and daily dialogue. Please refer to the paper for the details about the corpora collection. We then performed a register characterization to verify if the corpora's register were different enough to be compared. The register characterization tells us how personally involved, narrative, explicit, persuasive, and formal the sentences are. For example, for dimension 1, personal involvement, the FIG corpus leans toward informational content, while daily dialogue is closer to face-to-face conversations. Each dimension aggregates a set of linguistic features, and we also compare them individually to understand how they influence the register characterization. The details are on the paper. This step confirmed that even corpora in the same domain have different language patterns if built under varying situations. So our next step was to create a new corpus that contains the same content, the same sentences as FLG, which is our register-specific corpus, but using language that portrays a register similar to daily dialogue. We did this by performing a text modification. In a nutshell, we cloned FLG to what we called FLG2 and built a Python script that searches for specific features in the original corpus, and we replace it in FLG2 with words that are more likely to appear in daily dialogue. So, for example, daily dialogue has more prepositions and nouns than FLG, so we removed occurrences of these features in FLG2. At the end of this process, we had two parallel corpora, the original FLG and FLG2, which is a modified corpus containing the same sentences as the original one, but portraying register characteristics that are statistically similar to what we found in daily dialogue. So, for example, the average number of prepositions in FLG2 is close to the average number of this feature in daily dialogue, which is statistically lower than the average number of this feature for the original corpus. We also performed a study to check content preservation, naturalness of the modified corpus, which is reported in the paper. Now we could finally perform our user study. The goal was to investigate whether the participants would prefer sentences in one or another register. We presented the participants with a question and 2 answers that supposedly came from chatbots. Participants were invited to choose the answer they would prefer, considering the most appropriate for a tourist assistant chatbot, the most credible, and the one that would provide the best user experience. If the register plays a role, as we hypothesized, the participants would consistently choose the original data set sentence. So the study and the statistical results we detail in the paper, but I'll show a bit of the results. In short terms, participants did prefer the answers from the original corpus. The statistical results show that register-specific language has a significant impact on user perceptions of chatbots' language appropriateness, credibility, and user experience. And this effect is a stronger predictor than the individual characteristics of the interlocutors. Additionally, when we looked at the predictors for register interpretation, we could draw conclusions on the user's expectations of tourist-assisted chatbots. So, for example, we learned that some features are related to efficiency and give the participants a sense of getting the right amount of information. Some other features impact the perceptions of human likeness by positioning the chatbot as an artificial agent, but also allowing it to belong to the expected social category it represents. And finally, some features impact the perceived level of personalization, when the chatbot can provide personalized information, although not directly addressing the user or trying to be too intimate. In conclusion, our study shows that the language style used by a chatbot should be defined within the scope of register, since even datasets in the same domain may portray relevant, detectable linguistic differences that influence user perceptions of their interactions with a chatbot. We hope this study sheds light to the relevance of a register, and that future studies further address the understanding and applicability of register as a theoretical framework for chatbot language design. Thank you for watching.